Hello, 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 hello again. This is Chad Everett Broshears. I'm the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. And I was at my mechanic shop earlier today getting a radiator replaced in my vehicle. And I was talking to one of my open-minded, critical thinking friends uh, about a particular subject. And we started talking about some political things, and we're not much, any one of us that usually stays in a lot of conversation with me for very long is much politically active as necessary, like maybe a few friends of mine, but predominantly we're critical thinkers and we're free thinkers, meaning that we actually spend a good deal of time thinking outside of these convictions that people like to live by. So let me get started on what we talked about. All right. So by the way, I wasn't in some sort of contrastual disagreement whenever I was speaking with my friend at my mechanic friend. We started talking about a lot of things. We talked about gun violence and all of that, and different perspectives and viewpoints inside of the subject. You know, basically playing devil's advocate. And we got onto this. I actually led into the subject of being irresponsible, but yet blaming others. And that's where it just hit me. Like, even my mother, and I love my mother dearly. She's a saint to me. And for people that know that I'm non-religious, I'm not using that as a religious context, but she's just a very, she's a wonderful person that's gone through a great deal of challenges and came out amazing, as what you would expect for a lot of people with a great deal of character. So she is not the biggest Obama fan, but she also watches a lot of right-wing television. I am not on any side in politics. I am on the human side of all experiences. So with that being said, I don't affiliate myself with any particular type, any particular group, anything like that. I registered whenever I got my driver's license, well before I had any concept of a political party, other than I knew there were some political parties. They asked me clearly on my driver's license, or the information I was filling out for my driver's license, and it said, what party do I affiliate with? And I had the choice, Republican or Democrat. At that time, I was explained that Republicans want you to keep your own money, and you should be rewarded for your hard work, and Democrats want to take your money and give it to everybody else. And I was like, oh, I don't like either one of those, really. I mean, I do like to be rewarded for my hard work, but at the same time, I also know that the system, and at that time, I also knew that the system required money in order to continue to function. So the Democratic Party also had a very strong position. If we wanted to continue social services, we need to make sure we pay for it. I elected to file for being independent. Now, at that time, I'm like, I'm independent. I want to choose whatever the hell I want to choose. I didn't realize that what the independent party actually stood for, anything like that. And again, this is not for a political conversation. This is just to express, my experiences growing up. And I'm a nonconformist. Even calling me a nonconformist, I'm like, you don't know me. You know me enough to say I don't want to conform to things, but man, I'm like, don't call me that. Don't put me into a group. How dare you? Unless you call me human. And then I'm like, yes, you are spot frickin' on, man. Other than that, I don't align with any ideology, like very harshly. Don't put me into any particular group. If you find out I'm an atheist, don't put me into the position of how you've experienced atheist, and that's the way it needs to be, and that's who this guy is that's like making all these rapid hand gestures at his TV screen or his monitor and his, in his apparently dog napping room slash studio slash office. But yeah, I'm nothing you'll categorize in any one of those ways. I'm independent in every way, in the sense that I'm responsible for myself. So somebody else doesn't say, Chad, you need to think this way, and I think that way. That is not how I function. So Obama did it. Let's get into this. All right. So as a quick disclaimer, this video series on growing up in the wilds of suburbia is not intended in any way to replace anyone's professional opinions in the sense of a medical situation of any nature, nor am I giving you advice on anything that you should do, but more or less giving you an insight from my perspective and my education to bring about a new understanding to the way the world occurs for other people. Now, with that out of the way, there's actually the first video in this entire series. If you have any interest in finding out the full-on disclaimer, by all means, check out the very first video. It's a very short and brief introduction to this company, which is just basically the show's logo and the actual disclaimer broken into 3 pages. So, and you're welcome to pause it. Whatever you wish at that point. Just do not alter it in any way, because that makes it someone else's and not mine. All right, with that out of the way, why did Obama do it? So, and the developmental processes of everything. As children, we learn our world through our authorities, our early authorities. They're our survival, so we idolize them and we deify them to an extent. They are the ones that provide us at a young stage all of our securities to survive. And this is at the young stage, like a child, an infant, toddler, to all of the adolescent phases, until, of course, you get closer to puberty and you start to realize that there are far more authorities in the world than just whoever you and your close-knit group are, like your parents and your parents' friends. And if you're in churches, then the churches that, whoever you pray to or whatever, the child observes that particular individual has a higher authority, and therefore that higher authority also likely needs some sort of value for being a higher authority. I'm going to check something real quick to make sure I'm on task with. Okay. Beautiful. Make sure I'm using the correct microphone here. All right. So Obama did it, and here's how he did it. Oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to tell you why that's bullshit. Exactly why it's bullshit. Now, I'm not saying that all factors are actually excusable, but there's a certain point in time when you actually cannot do anything about the situation. Now, of course, you can vote. Of course, you can put your position out there. But a lot of times these positions are ignorant and manipulated and malleable to ignorant manipulation, or the purpose of desiring to keep people ignorant. Now, as a young person, as I was explaining before I got into my little rant there, as a young person, you develop with your early authorities. You take on your early authorities' insecurities indirectly, to a degree. Now, you may not choose to continue to keep those through your life, but you do take those on initially in a younger state. And how you take it on is because insecurities are usually avoided and or reacted towards. Now, most people do not go directly at their insecurities and try to develop them. What most people do is they do, as I said, they avoid or they react. But there's not a whole lot of, man, I'm tired of being, I refer to that as being hijacked. When you react to it. Even avoiding is in its own way being hijacked, because it's making you change your flight plan. Right? It's making you change your position. You are saying, I don't want to get around, I don't want to deal with that, and you take the long way through or around it because of your developmental abilities to deal with what you find as an insecurity or what you're insecure of. Hey, Pop, no guest cameos today. You sugar bear, you are just eager to get involved here. She knows that Obama didn't do it. I love you, Pup. Come on, baby. All right. So, and then Aurora, the little baby. Yeah. Okay. So, continuing on. Since we know earlier authorities have a lot of value in what we observe in our world or occurring world, we tend to adopt these characteristics. Because this is in the conversation in education for resume versus character. A lot of people stop listening to other people's promises to a degree, and they mimic their behaviors, or they learn to address the person's behavior and not so much about what the person says, but what the person does. No, ma'am. Hey, shush, 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 shush. All right. So, Sugar Bear is also a co-host in this, as you can now hear her. All right, guys. Okay. So, the loving family, by the way, we adopted her from the vet that saved her, and this is our wonderful little Aurora. She's still a pup. So she is upsetting the oldest of them. That's the one whimpering. So, young baby. All right, Daddy's going to make a video. Yeah, that's right. Talking politics, kind of. All right, guys, let me get back to it. So earlier authorities and what they do to us, they influence us to think and behave in a certain way. Now, this also goes into the conversation about free will, which I will be having in the near future with a good friend of mine, Steve Wetter, who's potentially going to become a co-host on occasion to the show. We'll discuss free will later and our stance on why there really is limited opportunities for free will. But initially, as far as this is concerned, we have our early authorities' political affiliations as well. Now, whenever you become incapable of dealing with certain things that the world offers, meaning you do not have the tool set necessary, the skill set necessary to deal with any one of the 8 areas of maturity, be it the physical body, if it's the community factors, if it's the cognitive reasoning or cognition, knowledge, function of the brain, if it's the emotional factor, sexuality, finances, business, or spirituality. And spirituality is connectedness, not a religious context or any sort of spiritual thing, but spirituality and the connectedness and responsibility for the planet. If you're immature in any one of those areas, you're ill-suited to make mature decisions when those challenges come about that require that particular skill set. So what happens when you do not have the tool set necessary to deal with such challenges, you develop you create a degree of suffering in that particular area. Now, this may be nothing more than a puppy that's hopping up and getting in the video. It could be something as as simple as you're living paycheck to paycheck. Now, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it doesn't take much to disrupt your financial stability, which creates more suffering. Now, whenever that occurs, if you do not have a valid source or tool set to go after or developmental option to overcome that challenge, you start seeking blame. Most people seek blame to their suffering. They don't realize that they get everything and anything they deserve in both directions. Life is not fair. Consider that if you win the lottery, that's also not fair to everyone else that played, nor is it fair that you won. It really is that simple. All right. So we get it, make it all kinds of complicated. All right. So if you believe that life is unfair and that you don't deserve what you're going through, you don't understand how you got yourself into the situation, no matter how dire the situation is. Genetics plays a role in this conversation, and I make that clear in Mastering You, in my course called Mastering You, Mastering the You of Development, which will be available November 1st, 2015. Now, if you do not know how to get out of that suffering, you will almost certainly seek blame for someone. If you blame yourself, that gives you a starting point to start looking for development. Gives you a place to start at and say, you know what, I don't know enough and I need to go learn this. Now, if you don't have that outlook or that viewpoint, you're waiting on an intervention. You're suffering and you're continuing to suffer. Now you have somebody who comes in who thinks they've figured it out. Most of these people utilize or leverage off of pseudoscience at best, or pseudo-economics, or pseudo anything that is the unproven direction for something. All right, it may make sense, they sound good, but it's not necessarily proof positive that it's effective or functional. It just sounds good, like creationism is pseudoscience. Now somebody comes along, they have a particular statement or a particular way of thinking that seems to give you an option. It occurs in such a way of being kind of a solution to your challenge. Now, it's not really it's a pseudo solution. What it is, it's not really a solution. What that actually is, Aurora, no ma'am, no. I see you back there playing. Okay, so what that is I'm going to move over so you don't have that. So what that is they come along and they make a few statements, and what happens to you being unprepared to say, I don't think that's right. You say, even if it has 1/1000th to 1/1,000,000th of a possibility of truth, it still becomes justifiable to how it could be true. So what that means is that you become fairly, like, you become pretty much infected by somebody else's idea or belief. Aurora, you want to go outside? Okay, calm down, baby. That's enough. Okay. So if somebody comes along, they make these statements, what happens is you don't have the defenses to work your way through it, and they provide it with such a way that sounds credible. So you say, hey, maybe this is right. I don't have a way of getting out of the financial issue. I know I heard on the news that unemployment is even worse, and that nobody's being able to find jobs, and people are getting laid off because Obama moved in Obamacare. And now we have businesses that won't hire people because they want to keep their employment levels below a certain point so that they don't have to pay. And these businesses are modifying and adjusting themselves because, so you understand what that is, by the way, is there was a new rule, or there was new laws put into place, and these businesses are continuing to try to strive for profit. Some of them are doing it just to survive because it hasn't matured to the point of continuously sustaining their employees if hardship were to occur. It's kind of like living paycheck to paycheck when a business does that. They're living too close to their means by how many people they've brought on. Their business very well may need that many people to produce, but ultimately, though, it's still a fairly immature position because if you, like, just same thing, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you don't have enough in your savings for a cushion to live very long if that paycheck gets cut off, or any time period to live after that paycheck is cut off. Give me a moment. I need to remove my co-host. She's becoming belligerent. Come on, babies. Come on. Come on. Everybody out. Let's go. Aurora? No. Aurora? Come on. Come on, Aurora. Get in here. Brief intermission, everyone. You coming in, Taylor? Come on, baby. Come on. All right. Well, I am back. Sorry about the 30-second interruption there. Okay. So if the company is not mature enough to maintain, if something happens, they haven't really budgeted themselves in such a way, or their product in such a way that they can justify, going a couple of days or months or whatever without actually being able to support everything. So the business itself is functioning closer to somebody who lives paycheck to paycheck. A business entity is a reflection of the people that run the company. There's nothing, by the way, that's not, it's making a statement that anything's wrong. It's not that it's wrong. It's just that it doesn't have the maturity yet as a company to sustain the employees. And the company itself, now that's if the company, that's the true justification. If the company itself is really just like, any one of these extremely large companies like HP or whatever, if they're doing it, they're almost certainly doing it to make their budget and their books look a lot better, maybe increase the likelihood or try to make their stocks look better so they get more investors or whatever it may be, but it's usually not what they say it is as far as a justification. Now, of course, they're so large that they can't even implement that particular position. Walmart cuts hours to reduce the full-time position portions. So they also aren't doing it because they can't afford to do it. They're doing it because they don't want to lose top-end profits for the high-end investors, or for their investors as well as the owners of the company. So as far as that's concerned. Now, I know that was a little bit of a tangent in another direction, but it still has value because these companies do not do that against you. If you have such a limited skill set, who's responsible for your skill set? If you say anybody is responsible for your skill set outside of yourself, you are irresponsible. You are actually living inside of being irresponsible. School is only taught you is only brought to teach you a basic level of knowledge so that you can function in society, to society, which is a system of belief, to how it functions. So it needs people to be brought up in such a way they understand how they need to function to survive inside of the system. So that's what they do for school. Now, as the people that have been watching my video series, and also for some of my personal clients that I work with directly, or my students, They know my position on development. Now, the human manual is designed specifically to start addressing these areas that are out of balance for us, that are keeping us from achieving our desires and goals, and reduce or minimize suffering. It actually joyfully goes, by the way, joy actually is the experience that you have after accomplishing a goal. Now, your intention and the what you intended to experience in a particular goal, if that meets up and directly, then you have joy. That doesn't mean happy. Joy can just be, you can be in joy or enjoying something that's occurring, because, like, for me, I do not always look for the positive, happy, hooked on happy, nonsensical belief system. I'm not that guy. I'm not the one that preaches pessimism or optimism. I actually teach against both of them, because they're just outright bullshit. You do not have to live inside of either one of those paradigms. The other one is, look, if you're not happy about something, there's a reason why you're not pleased with what you're experiencing. Most of the time is that you are ill-equipped to experience it. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that. But what it does mean is that you do not have the development to take on that challenge. Now, you'll learn it. A lot of people learn it the hard way. And the hard way is usually what we call suffering. So if you don't have the skill set to have the income generated necessary to sustain yourself, and you blame somebody else, you're exactly who I'm talking about. This is about becoming personally responsible. That's all it is. And how do we make people personally responsible in a way that they enjoy doing it? And that's simple. What do you want to achieve? If you're sitting back and saying Obama did it, you're irresponsible. I don't care what Obama actually did or what you think he actually did. If you're not doing something to ratify that challenge in your life, and you feel like ratifying that challenge in your life is going and grabbing a microphone and standing up on a frickin' soapbox, either on frickin' Facebook or any other social media, or actually in town square, and that's how you feel like you're making a difference, you're really just spreading propaganda. Do something about it. If you don't have the financial means to survive, start looking for additional income or a better paying job. Like, in the short term, fundamental value. And what I suggest you do in that is look at what you want to do. If you want to be an entrepreneur, or if you want to move up in management or move up into a company or become the more ideal candidate, get a skill set that makes you more ideal. If you've been working at McDonald's and you've been flipping burgers, or whatever company you may work for, and you've been just doing the mundane actions, your skill set is not very valuable. It's not. You don't have enough of it, like, experience to do much of anything. And to think you're going to get some sort of awesome job somewhere, no, that's a shot in the dark opportunity that barely ever occurs for anyone. It's like winning the lottery, but magnified. So few people are going to be like, hey, by the way, I'm starting a company, and this is a startup company that is ironclad and it's going to work and there's no risk or anything, and I need you to run it, or I need you to do this for me, and I'm going to pay you far more than what you're worth at your skill set because you and I are buddies. That person is somebody you may not want to work for. Is if you don't have the skill set to justify the position, what are they bringing you on for? And if they're really truly doing it because you're pretty cool, you guys are good buddies, or whatever it is, they don't necessarily have the business maturity for you to abandon everything else and just give up the complete devotion to that. Be careful. All right. Obama didn't do that to you. You did that to you. If you don't have the skill sets, it's not school's fault. You only see part of my library. I have another whole bookshelf over here, and I've got books all over the place because I love to read. I also love mentors. I absolutely adore having mentors. I love it. If I have a mentor and they say be there at this time, I'm usually early. If I am dealing with a mentor, that person is gracious enough to offer me life experience at such a ridiculous rate. And I mean ridiculous meaning that if they bring an education that's going to change my life, how do you put a dollar amount to that? Right? So if they're charging $500 an hour and I only need them for maybe 13 hours of my entire life, And I could make a ridiculous amount of money off of that, or I can make a ridiculously amazing relationship with someone, or if I could stop all of the suffering, like what is that worth, right? What is that worth to you? Sometimes it's only $16.79, $20, whatever. It could be a book. It could be a mentor. But one way is for certain. If you know me, you know that I am fanatical about knowledge. Knowledge to put into action. I have no interest in letting these things collect dust. None. And when I mean these things, I'm talking about my books. I have no interest in letting my books collect dust. I also like to have very balanced relationships. So the people that are my mentor, I seek out areas that I could also offer mentorship to them. So it's reciprocal. If not, then I understand that and if there is a dollar amount, it's always agreed on. I always look for the developmental opportunities. Now, in myself, if I ever find myself passing the blame, which is what people really seem to, they've told me they love about me, is I don't pass the blame on anything, for anything at all. If I'm running late, I don't blame it on an accident. If I didn't budget enough time to get through traffic, regardless of an accident, that's on me. I don't show up late for work or anything else or any appointments and say, it was the world's fault. Nope. Or as my favorite one, Obama did it. That's such bullshit. All right, so if you grow up with this default position, wanting to find blame, children do it all the time, by the way. They get in trouble for something and they blame somebody else. When I hear adults doing it, I just hear unbelievable irresponsibleness. Working in the training industry, in the personal training industry for the years that I've done that, I constantly had to deal with that. That was one of the things I considered I was actually being paid for, because I love to teach, but I was being paid for dealing with bullshit. That people saying, oh, well, you know, it's this or that, and I couldn't do it because of this or whatever. And then I realized what was more suiting for me in my skill set, what I could actually create self-purpose in is actual development and maturity. It's not actually going to be in the physical body as its only purpose and only way of development or outlet to that particular thing or to anything. It wasn't going to satisfy me to be just one area. So I created the Human Manual, and I created this series called Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia, because this is a symptom of irresponsibility. You'll have people that have made amazing, absolutely amazing progress in themselves. Now, the only way we can qualify somebody's made amazing progress in their life is simply because you measure them against other people and yourself. And you say, I haven't done that yet. I haven't acquired that yet. But you know what? Damn. That I wish I had. Or, oh, man, that is awesome. I bet my life would be better if I had achieved that too. All right? That's where we put that measurement value and why we measure things like that. This is in no way an exhaustive list of any particular element. This is just to create an insight so you can stop the bullshit. You can stop blaming other people and get responsible for yourself. If you're suffering, consider that you created it. If it's the government, consider that you haven't done enough to actually ratify the challenges the government is putting onto you. If you truly live in tyranny, there's plenty of people that leave North Korea. That happens. That is tyranny. Absolute tyranny. So, what's going on in North Korea is horrible crimes against humanity. But if you were raised in it, you knew no other. But every once in a while, out of so many people, somebody wakes up and goes, this isn't right. Something's not right about this. By the way, North Korea is cut off from the world as far as like internet and everything else. They don't have access to the world. They don't know anything about us other than what their authority, their government actually says about them. If you blame all your challenges on the police, consider that they deal with a lot of irresponsible people. You may have very well been one of those people. If they had to interact with you, it's almost certain you're being irresponsible to some degree. Don't sit back and blame the police. Don't sit back and blame any race. If you're doing that, you're selling yourself out. You're buying in bulk. You're bulk buying, membership card carrying, bulk buying bullshit. It's not anyone else's fault. It's not Obama's fault. It's not George Bush's fault. It's not, you go through it. I don't care. Go through it. If he was reelected for 2 terms, why? If you feel the government's corrupt, what the hell are you doing about it and doing to change it? You're just sitting around bitching about it and telling other people and enrolling them? Are you actually looking into your sources to find out whether or not they're legit or if they're just really well-written propaganda? Get into action, man. If don't go jumping into action if you can't even sustain yourself, because then it's just teaching more people how not to sustain themselves while being an activist. The 99% failed hard, drastically, for many reasons. And there's a great deal of that is because there was a lot of irresponsible people who became part of that movement. Is that the movement was completely bust from the beginning? Some of the concepts were very ill-conceived. Trying to shift the world's power and population and or the money values in the system and trying to create equality is its own form of anarchy. Now, I say that because if you know about egalitarian positions and utopian type ideas or ideals, the basis of that, like communism, would have been a great system had it actually been put into place by mature individuals through what Karl Marx actually wanted communism to be. Same thing as socialism. If we implemented socialism in this country at this point, this country would go bankrupt because we have far too many freaking people that are immature, that are not willing to do anything to change their life. And they're only willing to blame others for their faults. You see it all the time. All the time. If there's a race challenge, it is almost always fueled by insecurities and shortcomings or suffering, and that's the person or persons they choose to blame. This stuff gets really simplistic. You don't have to get into some sort of hate speech or any of that other stuff. Their hearts still beat, blood still courses through them. They may have experienced something that's so drastic that you haven't experienced. And it doesn't mean it has to be heartache or some sort of hardship like that. It could be backed by it, though. But if they've ever tasted money to the expression or the extent that some of these individuals that get into politics have felt, and then you know what it's like to work your ass off to make $1 million, and then all of a sudden somebody comes up and offers you $14 million to sell out some of your values, you may struggle morally or ethically with it for a bit, but it's also likely, if you're immature, that you'll just take it. You'll take the money because you're immature. And it doesn't matter if you've gotten to government or not. It doesn't mean you're mature in every area. It just means you're mature enough to get people to want to vote for you. That's it. That's it. Getting enough people to want to vote for you. Now, there's a lot of stuff involved with it as far as what it takes to get elected, especially when other interested parties get involved and they want a certain person in office. They may throw a great deal of money at advertising, which creates more of a populist understanding of somebody, and negative slander campaigns as well as the positive enlightenment campaigns for a particular candidate, and the other person can't afford that kind of artillery or even defense. Then they're beating the polls just simply because your ignorance allowed you to vote to the worser of the two parties, or the worser of all the parties. So if you sit around and blame everyone else like Obama, you just don't have the maturity to make a lot of decisions for yourself. And you're looking for a scapegoat. You're looking for someone to blame. And once you actually encode blame, when you actually think to yourself, that's the reason, you will almost certainly do nothing about explore the true why. You won't necessarily dig into it and say, I was the asshole or I was the irresponsible person. You're almost certainly not going to do that without some degree of intervention, whether you're just tired of it continuing to show up, which does not look that way for our country because we continue to... Hey, stop. Our boy, he gets a little excited at times. And our girl, she don't like it. All right. Well, that was a little derailing. So you get people. It's all right, Taylor. All right. So you get people that want to blame everyone else. I hope this is back on track where I was at. Yeah, you get people that want to blame everyone else, and then they don't want to do anything about it, and they close the book on that particular blame. And they basically resign to suffering. Because a lot of times we blame things we can't do anything about. You think you can, like getting a Republican elected into the next political opportunity for, presidency. You may think that, or a better Democrat into that position. I don't believe I will see in my lifetime someone who's independent getting elected as a president, and that's unfortunate. But at the same time, it's kind of the way that I've experienced things. But I'm not going to sit there and get all pissed off at any one of the presidents. I'll look at it from this point. We're in a capitalistic society. It is a Darwinian type society where the more effective business wins. That doesn't mean the most ethical business. So long as that the ethics of that business doesn't break too many laws on humanity or specific laws that are in place, then that company will continue to survive. And even if the other companies that it's competing with are extremely charitable, and they are imbalanced in their finances by how much charity or how much they do for other people, then it's a pretty good chance that the company that's more effective is going to survive in a capitalist society. It's the same thing in evolution. It doesn't pick which is the most charitable as much as it chooses the most survivable. And survivable means effective against its environment. The economy is an environment. We even use that in evolutionary teachings. The difference, or the terminology we'll use, the economy of a particular species. The species thrives when it's in an economy that it can thrive in, and it also evolves to a particular economy because there's a gap in that economy that it can fill, whether it's beating another species out or it's filling in a niche that wasn't quite there before by its own evolutionary design. That's the same thing. We're in a Darwinian society in capitalism. We're not going after and we're not making an evil giant of anything. I don't teach my students to make an evil giant of anything. If you disagree with a company's practices, don't buy from that company. Don't give any resources to that company. That's it. It's simple. And the more people that know about it, from rational people, not radicalists. Radicalists turn me off even if they're right. They do. I can't sit and watch radicalists go off anymore if they're spitting out and they speak with such conviction that you can confuse it with hate. I'm not a fan of it. Not at all. Even if it's in their writing and it's that way. I won't do it. I can't. I won't. I prefer that not be a source that I actually involve myself with, because I don't want that particular type attribute of human beings propagated or exacerbated. I don't want it personally. I don't think it's necessary. Now, if I actually get an opportunity to consult with those individuals, then we would discuss, a little more compassion and how to actually be more effective in compassionate connection. I could be an asshole, believe me. Ask my girlfriend. I could be an asshole. But that's a different measurement. That it's not Obama's fault. I'm responsible for it. All right, so I'm going to quickly go over a couple of things and make sure that I did actually mention and carry through on my word with a certain degree that I intended to. So one of the first things is the fundamental foundation or fundamental development. And again, like I'd mentioned earlier in the video about, our early authorities and how I'll add a little bit to that. Our parents and our early authorities did a pretty good job teaching us, no matter who you are, teaching us how to deal with the world through their functional abilities. If that parent was an asshole, then it's possible you picked up some of those traits, but at the same time, they taught you as best they could. Even if they were neglectful, they taught you as best they could because they had to do for themselves in order to do for you. No, it's just a fact of nature. We have to do for ourselves before we do for another. That's why whenever you're in an airplane, they tell you, the air mask, the oxygen mask falls, place it on yourself first, and then assist whoever's next to you that may need assistance. That's why they do it. That's why they have that like that. Most people want to get into this idea of martyrdom where you have to do for your child first or do for somebody else first. Well, I can tell you, if you do for your child first and you're imbalanced in yourself, you're teaching your child that that's how they need to do it for their future generations. That you should be a martyr, that you should give up yourself before them. and all of that. Now, I'm not saying you need to be selfish either to the point that you cause harm of your child, but I am saying that there is a middle ground that most people never shoot for because they don't know to shoot for it. All right. If they're responsibly taught, usually they go to the selfish side. But again, also, if it's do for your child first, that's also a position of irresponsibility because you're not doing enough for you. Now, if you have it budgeted and you're developed well enough, you can do enough for you and you're well taken care of. You're in bed on time. You eat the right foods. Your stress levels are lower than, out of a possible 10, you're at a 4. That's pretty responsible. That's somebody who's dealing with things in life and not trying to write it off to somebody else's blame or responsibility. Now, Obama didn't do that to you. Sorry, didn't do it. George Bush didn't do it to you either. They may have affected our country in a negative way, but you know what? Opposition and oppression creates some amazing characters. They do. So, I'm not going to quote any or throw any names out on which characters, but look through history. They didn't erect statues for people that did nothing to change the world. Pretty much everybody that you see a statue for has done something to change the direction of humanity to some degree. All right. So being irresponsible by default, that is your position. If you are blaming others, you are irresponsible by default. All right. Political agendas, that's easy. Find a political campaign. There's always an agenda. It benefits them for you to be malleable and manipulatable, because if you're suffering, that's easy to start telling people, listen to it. By the way, we're getting close to our voting season. Really pay attention to this. They'll tell you directly or indirectly who's at fault for the job crisis, or for the Medicare crisis, or for our social system crises, or for our world crises. They will tell you who's at fault and who you should blame. They will. I can't stand those fucking people. I can't. They aggravate the shit out of me, because if they truly believe that, I don't want them in office. If they don't truly believe it and they're doing it to manipulate you, I don't want them in office at all. Don't create a solution by offering blame somewhere else. Create a solution by looking at how we can overcome the challenge without freaking poaching somebody out. If you have to poach somebody out, fine. We're changing presidents. We're doing it. It's going to happen. Is it going to be better or worse? We don't know. But if the person that's actually going to be taking the helm is just sitting there consistently blaming everybody else without even offering viable solutions, get the fuck off the camera. It's a shit shoot at this point. We don't have mature people trying to offer us a solution to our challenges. We have irresponsible, immature people trying to offer us solutions that are really just offsetting blame. I don't want that person running my country. And I'm active enough to tell you that I can explain through the process to where they're being irresponsible enough that I don't think they're the ideal candidate. Look at their track records. Look at their character, what they actually have going on. Look at what they say, how they say it. Watch their character to their resume versus their resume. Watch the differences. We have people that'll blatantly lie and act as if it's their child who overdosed on drugs and that they're completely against marijuana. If you're against marijuana, let's have a conversation. Tell me why. If you say it's a gateway drug, I am going to take that argument apart very quickly. No, it's not a drug that's a gateway. It is very simple. It's the psychology around it that's a gateway. Preacher's daughter, ever hear that little situation and scenario? It's a pretty simple one. Being a bachelor at one point in time, if I knew somebody was a preacher's daughter and she wanted to go out and have a drink with me, yeah, I could pretty well look between the lines on that one. It was a pretty good possibility she was not going to be the discreet little, church mouse. All right. And looking at any other factor. All right. Read between the lines on it. Okay. If you believe that marijuana is a gateway drug because you've been taught that your whole life, which I was brought up thinking it too, or if it makes you stupid or anything like that, it's bullshit. It's plain, unadulterated, nonsensical bullshit. All right. Alcohol is just as bad and or worse at times, and it's far more health impactful, but I'm also not on a campaign to get people not to drink. I'm on a campaign to get people to start being responsible, because by being responsible, we can start becoming mature in our lives. And the more responsible and mature you are, the less you suffer. It's a very simple formula. If you're interested in finding out more about that, November 1st, 2015, I'll have plenty of programs available. We have 5 of them that I will have launched on on thehumanmanual.net. So www.thehumanmanual.net. That website will house all of my programs that are currently available. So, all right, political agenda. All right, becoming responsible. Ooh, that's such a good one. I just mentioned it. You want to limit or reduce your suffering, become responsible. That'll give you access to becoming more mature to your challenges, so you can actually grow your. By being more mature, I mean developing your skill set. Right? Life going the way you want it to. That is exactly what happens when you become responsible about your life. If you say Obama did it, you're digging your own grave. You are suffering your way into death. It's not just Obama. You blame anybody else. My parents did this to me. Yes, your parents did some stuff. Okay, I get it. I get it. Are you going to hold that against them the rest of your life? That's your own grave. You're digging it. You're digging your own suffering grave, and you're going to bury yourself in it. All right. The conclusion is grow up, really. Now, how I mean to do this is by being responsible. Stop blaming other people and look at where it's your fault, no matter what it is. Find out how much of it is your fault and how much you can change. Do not ask or pray for serenity to deal with what you cannot change, or to change what you can and then deal with what you cannot. Because most of the time, you don't look for the solutions to the level of skill set that you have. You don't look beyond that. You're like, I can't change it. Hallelujah, please change my life. Pick me. Don't worry about starving children in Africa. I need this because, you know what, I'm not making enough to get this new car I want. That's a look of disdain. All right. Grow up. And really, it's a step-by-step process. If you do want to stay where you are and you like being stuck and suffering, then fine, do that. But stop enrolling other people in your bullshit. Really? Is that the greatest payoff you look for? Do you know how much joy is felt and how happy you can be by accomplishing and overcoming goals and challenges that you've never overcome before and that you haven't reached the goal before? You know how good that feels? Really, you become like addicted to the process of becoming that much better at what you do, that much more proficient, that much more effective. But if you sit back and you complain about other people and say Obama did it, or anybody else, I don't give a shit. You're not going very far. You're not. You may develop. Yeah, I'm not saying you won't, but I am saying that you're personally retarding your actual capabilities. If you've made $200-something thousand a year, you're doing nothing to accomplish to actually have to generate that. It's very minimal. Your business is on autopilot. And then you're sitting back blaming other people for something just because you've amassed a degree of money that makes it so that it's easier to live. Stress less on living in that particular element doesn't mean that there's not other areas for you to develop in. Finances is one of 8 areas that I cover. One of 8. If that's the only area you've developed yourself into the proficiency that it goes on autopilot and limits the amount of suffering when it comes to paying your bills, you are missing the boat on total development. All right, guys, this is how it works. So November 1st, 2015, the video or the actual series and the developmental programs will all be available. To date, there will be 5. So to date, there will be 5 programs available. November 1st, 2015. All right. Mastering you in relationships, mastering you in business, mastering you. That's just that one. Mastering the you, right? Mastering your, what was that other one? Oh, damn it. Yeah. Mastering your legacy. That's a great one. That's a bit more intense, and it is not a walk-in first day particular program. That one is going to be, that's an advanced program for people. creating your legacy. And that's actually mastering your legacy. So there's two parts: creating your legacy and then mastering your legacy. Creating your purpose. All right, that's another great one. It's creating your self-developed purpose. All right, guys. This is Chad Everett Brochures. I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. I hope that this video has been insightful for you. If you disagree or you agree or you'd like to expand on anything that I've said, please comment below. Share this video with whomever you care to. Also, feel free to comment in any which way you'd like. Email me if you care as well. The email address will be, at this moment, it's chadbrochures@gmail.com. Middle of October, it will be, I believe it's going to be chadbrochures@thehumanmanual.net. That's almost certainly going to be it. That website will be launched in the beginning of next month. So, all right. Again, this is Chad Everett Brochures. I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. Feel free to leave any information that you like. Share it as much as you like on social media. You could even share this video on emails if you feel someone else would benefit from it. All right, guys, that's it. Please enjoy your day. I hope that you have found value in this, and I look forward to our next video. Enjoy.